So, um, well, in case you don't know who I am, I'm Kelly. I'm the proud RPYA pastor here. So, RPYA stands for Rocky Peak Young Adults. So, if this is your first time, welcome. I'm so happy that you've joined us. A lot of times you come to places like this or you listen to talks like the one you're about to listen to, and you realize that that guy is not answering any of the questions that I'm asking in life. And in order to mitigate that reality, we have a phone number that you can text your questions to. Because the reality is that I'm going to do my best to unpack God's word as we're walking through the book of James. We're walking through a book where Jesus' half brother wrote. And I want to make sure that we're still connecting with you individually and uniquely to where you are at. So I will do my best to spend the last 15 minutes to address those questions. And those questions come into that number anonymously. So go ahead. You can take your phones out or just write it down in your journals. It's 949-791-9377. And of course, if you're here today and you're like not really sure that you believe the things we believe, that's okay. The disciples didn't believe Jesus either. None of them were waiting outside of the tomb when Jesus rose from the dead. There was no welcoming party. Despite all the warnings, despite all the announcements, despite all the messages that Jesus says, hey, I'm coming back in 3 days, none of those guys were there because they didn't believe him. And so if you're at a place in your life where you have serious doubts about what you believe, this is a safe place for you. I just hope that you can feel like you can belong no matter what you believe, and that you'll leave here learning, loving Jesus more than when you came. Sound good? Great. Thank you, Ash. Um, today's really interesting. You know, college professors go through sensitivity training. Did you know that? You know, one of the sensitivity methods is how to inform students on the penalties on their papers. So one of those sensitivity examples would be like if a teacher says, hey, your paper was late, therefore you will have some penalties, right? Instead of saying that, they might say something like this: the paper was late, or the paper did not meet the deadline, therefore there are some penalties, or it will be penalized. Instead of it making it personal, it made it practical, right? Very not offensive to the person, but focusing on the actual object. And so that type of sensitivity training Pastor James does not have, okay? Right? There is no sensitivity training on James chapter 5, okay? When James chapter 5, if you were reading this, the idea that James is trying to come across, he is trying to convict the soul, convict the heart. He actually wants to evoke an emotional response that is very personal, right? He wants you to know that you are the object, you are the subject of his attention in this passage. So I'm sorry in advance, right? This passage is actually meant to hurt. Yes, sometimes the truth hurts. The truth is, the doctor may say to you, you have COVID-19. But there's no healing without understanding the truth, right? You cannot be treated for a disease that you don't know that actually exists. Dr. James here is letting you know that we are infected with a 4-letter word. It starts with a G and it ends with D. It's called greed. So open up your Bibles to James chapter 5 as we read this together. James chapter 5, we're only going to do 6 verses together with the time that we have here. It's verses 1 through 6, and this is what it says. James chapter 5, verses 1 through 6. It's on the board, it's on your papers, but it's also in your own Bible apps. And it says it this way. In case you don't know, you know, we've gone through that. James is half-brother of Jesus. He says, now listen, you rich people. Weep and wail because of the misery that is coming on you. Your wealth has rotted, and moths have eaten your clothes. Your gold and silver are corroded. Their corrosion will testify against you and eat your flesh like fire. You have hoarded wealth in the last days. Look, the wages you failed to pay. Look, the wages you failed to pay, the workers who mowed your fields are crying out against you. The cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord Almighty. You have lived on earth in luxury and indulgence, self-indulgence. You have fattened yourself in the day of slaughter. Verse 6. You have condemned and murdered the innocent one who was not even opposing you. Huh? And that's how James did not take sensitivity training when he went to pastor school. And so there's a couple questions that I want to ask. And the first question is, should Christians even be rich? Number one. And two, how should we spend our money? Number one, should Christians even be rich? And then number two, how should we spend our money? And the reality or the alluring thing about money is that there's a temptation to think that money will solve our problems, right? Anybody ever heard of the lottery? How many of you think that your life would well, you're probably not going to answer the question, but figuratively, how many of you think your life will increase if you won the lottery today? How many think the quality of your life would increase if you won $60 million? Okay, great. Thank you for your honesty, right? See, the lie is that if we win the lottery or if we have a lot of money, there are three lies. We think our problems will be solved, our happiness would increase, and we would actually be more generous to others. How many of you think you would be more generous to others if you happen to have $60 million in your bank account? Some of you may think you would be more generous. But the unfortunate truth is that 70% of lottery winners end up broke within 7 years. And even worse, the winners who typically win with 70%, they either die a horrible death or they witness someone close to them die and suffer. 5 examples real quick. There's one example of this married couple where they were married. The husband wins the lottery, right? The wife instantly divorces him, takes all the money. Number 2, there's statistics where winning the lottery only makes you more addicted to winning the lottery. And so you spend all your lottery winnings on buying more lottery tickets. Number 3, somebody said, if you win the lottery, you should expect to be exploited by your friends. This one woman said when she won the lottery, I had a friend who claimed to be behind on her local taxes and how they were going to take her house if she didn't pay. After she left, I looked up her tax records and saw that she wasn't behind after all. And when I printed out the page and sent it to her, well, that was the end of our friendship. Number 5, here are some examples of people who suffered. Abraham Shakespeare, he won $30 million in Florida in 2009, was shot twice in the chest. His body was found under a slab of cement in 2010. David Edwards, 1997, several years after winning the lottery, was evicted from his $1 million home in Florida after failing to pay his own HOA dues. Edwards lost all of his money in a few years and ended up living in a storage unit surrounded by his own feces. He died 2013, age 58. It's interesting how 1 Timothy talks about money. 1 Timothy 6:10 says, the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Some people eager for money have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. What what Timothy is saying is that there isn't much that someone is not willing to do given the right amount of money. Every sin. Consider Jesus' betrayal was for money. The allurement of money is what it is. It's fleeting. It's grief. Don't mistake money as a blessing. It can be a burden. It can be a burden. And James wants to give us some insight on how money can actually bring us grief. It can actually be a witness against us. It actually can possess us. It's funny how possessions end up possessing us. So he gives us three things. First, he gives us a warning. Just like the theologian Puff Daddy. Mo money, mo problems. Secondly, he gives us the judgment that is ahead. The things that we call blessings are perhaps a burden. And then number three, he also reveals to us the witnesses, the people who are witnessing, who are watching us spend our money, what they have to say about it as well. See, it's not just the stuff that we have, it's how we got our stuff and who we stepped on to get there. So, number one, the warning. Verse 1. Now listen, you rich people, weep and wail. Listen, you rich people, weep and wail because the misery that is coming on you. Okay. Who is he talking to? Who is he talking to? Is he talking about you rich people? I don't know. Commentators are divided on this. Right? James is talking to a very poor, persecuted church that was showing favoritism to who? To rich people. And so he wants to recalibrate our expectations on what wealth does. So he's talking to people who favor rich people. And he's sending a message to them and through them, perhaps to us, perhaps to you, perhaps to us who will sacrifice righteousness for wealth. See, it's really easy to look at a passage like this and say, nah, this doesn't apply to me. Right? Because there's not one person in here that would admit to actually being rich unless you've been to another country. Because the reality is that we live within the 8% of the world's wealth population. So if you literally make over $22,000 a year, right, you are making more than 92% of the rest of the people in the world. $22,000. And if you have a household income of $60,000, guess what? You are still you are still living above 92% of what people are living, or you're living above 92% of what people are living in today around the world. For instance, some things we take for granted. You have a thermostat? When you're feeling a little uncomfortable, just go over there and just press some numbers and voila, comfort. Right? The rest of the world doesn't have that. You have a faucet. People can't even drink water. But some of us won't even drink the water if it's not the right temperature. Hey, I'm not coming after your stuff. I'm not here to make you feel bad. I'm just saying, we have to realize if we're really rich or not. And I want to help you understand at the level of wealth that we're talking to. Do you have electricity? Do you have lights that you can actually adjust the intensity in? Ooh, like when you wake up in the middle of the night and you turn on the light to the bathroom and it's like, oh, so bright, bring it down. Can some of you guys do laundry inside your house? That's a luxury. How about when you want to go somewhere and you can just get into your car with a few wheels and travel miles within minutes? That's a luxury. How about some people don't have cars? How many of you have a house for your car? Listen, you rich people. James is not trying to go after your stuff. He's trying to go after your heart. And you have to ask yourself, is your heart more interested in wealth? Is your heart more interested in riches? Or is it more interested in righteousness? Ask yourself the question, is your heart more interested in riches or righteousness? Who are these rich people? I guarantee it's most of us in this room. And if we don't feel rich, oh gosh, the temptation. If you are not rich, you're probably spending your time and your energy trying to get rich. That's the reality for most of us in our friend group. It's possibly you, and you know, it has been me. At this moment, it's not. But 10 minutes ago, it might have been. So this letter is written to us. Let's understand the reality. So first, James has given us a warning. Number 2, he's also pronouncing judgment. That's point number 2, verse 2. Says it this way. Your wealth has rotted, and moths have eaten your clothes. Your gold and silver are corroded. Their corrosion will testify against you and eat your flesh like fire. You have hoarded wealth in the last days. Now, this is really harsh, right? I mean, this sounds like death metal lyrics for sure. In fact, I'm sure somebody has written a song and didn't give credit to James. But James is speaking as though he's a prophet, right? He's talking about last days. He is so certain of the last days. He's talking about your wealth as if it already happened, as if the corrosion has already happened, right? He's so certain about the coming judgment that he's speaking in past tense. Does that make sense? Right? Because these rich people, right, their wealth has not rotted at the moment, but he's speaking from a 30,000-foot view as from God's perspective as he looks at time from the beginning to the end and the end from the beginning, and he is looking down like God is looking down from heaven, seeing the wealth of people, finding security in their wealth, finding security in what they think is valuable like gold and silver, finding their significance in what they wear. And saying, no, moth has eaten your clothes, even as you're wearing it. Instead of feeding people, your clothes are feeding insects. Your gold and silver that you've trusted in and invested in, it's already corroded. Things that you think cannot corrode, by the way, you never hear of gold corroding, but from 30,000-foot view and God looking through all of time and history saying, hey, that little hunk of metal, it's already running away from you. And all the wealth that you have in your life, it is actually testifying against you. The word testify, you got to picture like a courtroom where God brings all of your stuff and he puts it right in front of you. The clothes that you didn't wear that is being eaten by moths that are in your closet right now. Or the shoes that you don't wear because you're collecting. He brings it all in here, and the judge looks at you and says, hey, you gave your life to Jesus. You say you love God, right? But here's all the stuff that obviously testify against the fact that you really don't love God. You love stuff, right? This is like a courtroom setting, right? All the mouths that you didn't feed, and all the mounds of money that you do have, it's testifying against you, right? This is not helping your case, convincing God that you love him. The cars, the clothes, the gold, the investment, all of that shows me that you love the world, that you are wedded to the world. You're not wedded to Christ. It shows me that you are welded to the world. It's testifying against us, rich people. And it says here, you have hoarded wealth in the last days. All right. And it's eating your flesh like fire. Again, prophetic. And it says that you've fattened yourself it says here, you fatten yourself for the days of judgment. Right, verse 3, right? Go ahead and throw up verse 3 or 2 and 3 again. Verse 4. Go to verse 4. Oh, verse 5. Yeah. You have lived on earth in luxury and self-indulgence. You have fattened yourself in the last day. Now, I want to speak briefly on this word fatten yourselves. Fatten yourself. So now we had that picture of the courtroom. You guys remember that? I just talked about that before I got distracted with the Bible verses. And then the second part is this fattening yourself. Now, you have to think about it like if you were like old MacDonald and you had a farm and you had a lot of cows, right? Now picture all the cows, right? The skinny cows, the medium-sized cows, and the big fat cows. Now, the big fat cow, gets the best grass. It gets the most grass and gets a lot of attention as well. The farmer comes by, always brushing the big fat cow, gets the best treatment. All the other cows are jealous of the big fat cow. Can you see how that works? Until all the medium-sized cows and the skinny cows one day wake up and the big fat cow's gone. You know why? Because it's on my plate. Right. See, what you don't realize is it's the same with our wealth. Right? The same with our wealth is that, we spend time, we spend money, we go after accumulating a lot of things, and what it's ending up doing is fattening and bloating our heart until it pushes Jesus out of our heart because we've relied on comfort more than we've relied on Christ. And I was going to give you an example because I really like Wagyu. But I told you about the cow. But Wagyu is probably the fattest cow at the most prime time that you can eat, like beef. And anybody ever been to Japan? Right? Okay, I went to Japan, right? And if you've not been to Japan, Wagyu is the bomb, right? And again, you do not want to envy the Wagyu cow, right? You want to eat the Wagyu cow. You don't want to envy it. Now, when you think about the wealth and the riches that you watch on HGTV, don't envy them. You don't know what it costs them to get there. Just like you don't want to envy a fattened cow because they are fattening themselves for the day of judgment or the day of slaughter. So we looked at the warning, we looked at the judgment, and now, lastly, let's look at the witnesses. Right, let's look at the witnesses. Verse 4, 5, and 6. Look, the wages, look, the wages that you failed to pay the workers that mowed your fields are crying out against you. Now, that seems oddly relevant, but the cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord Almighty. Verse 5, you have lived on earth. That's one category of poverty. Were the day laborers. The second category of poverty in the ancient world was people who had physical ailments, who were lame, right? Which they had broken ailments, right? They literally physically couldn't work, so nobody helped them out at all. The second category, so this is the second category, the non-working category of poverty. Lame, orphans, widows, lepers. Not leopards, lepers, people who had pretty much, it's like the equivalent of having COVID-19 and not being quarantined. You just stay away, right? That's just what happens, right? It was a skin disease that people could not, cure back then, so they were permanently quarantined away from society, but unless somebody helped them out, they were dependent upon the charity of others, right? So those are the two types of poverty in the ancient world. Now, how did God make provision for this? Right? What was God's economy to make provision for things that were going to be inevitable? There's always going to be day laborers. There's always going to be people who cannot take care of themselves. So what did God do? Well, God made provisions for these people, but the wealthy, rich people paid no attention. I'll give you 6 examples how God actually made provision. Number 1, God actually told people to pay the laborers on the day that they worked. That's pretty awesome. Like every single day I just got like a paycheck, or like my bank account just kept growing every day. Um, Deuteronomy 24:14 says, before the sun sets, you pay the person. Number 2, every 7 years, all of your debts were supposed to be released. Every 7 years, you're supposed to cancel all debts. That's Deuteronomy 15:1. These rich people were not canceling debts. They were leveraging it to keep their laborers in the field. Also, number 3, there were social service laws to help protect orphans and widows. That was in Deuteronomy 14:28. And number 4, there were supposed to be, this is awesome, Exodus 22:25, God instituted interest-free loans. Imagine that. You go to college, take out a loan, and you don't pay a dime more than the $30,000 a year that you signed up for. Cha-ching. It's pretty awesome. I don't know if anybody got school loans in here, but I did, and I finished paying those off 20 years later. And then there was also gleaning principles in Leviticus 19:9. Gleaning principles were when a farmer harvested grain or harvested food or fruit or berries or whatever was like fell on the ground, God said, hey, don't pick it up. And whatever you harvest, whatever grew outside of the boundaries of your field, God said, don't harvest there. Those are called gleaning principles, right? And that was meant to be there to make provision for the who? The poor and the needy and the lame and the sick and those who could not take care of themselves. And then the 6th one, which is pretty awesome, is called the Year of Jubilee. It's described in Leviticus 25:8. And that was every debt, all the land that was lent to you, every 50 years you have to give it back. You just give it back. No matter how much you owed on it, every 50 years you just gave it back to whoever owned it before, or whatever debt you had, just go ahead, completely expunged. Right? Those are the laws that were instituted in the Old Testament that were being ignored by the rich people that James is talking about. Instead, they were living in luxury and self-indulgence. What that means is that they were committed to their comfort instead of being committed to serving Christ, right? If you want treasures in heaven, you ever heard of that? Like saying treasures in heaven? Right? If you want to develop treasures in heaven, you want to build up your spiritual bank account, God says, invest in the things that I care about most. And I don't care about your Xbox. I don't care about your shoes. I don't care about your hair, your gel, I don't know why I said gel, but your hair or your hairspray or your cars or the type of tires that you put on your car, or the type of rims, or the type of school that you went to, or the type of job that you have, or type of whatever. Or the type of money that you're saving up for. I don't care how many generations of wealth that you're saving up for your children and your children's children and their children. No, he doesn't care about how much you are providing security for them. He cares of whether or not that you are investing in the things that he actually cares about. And what does God care about the most? People who will glorify him. Yes. He cares about people. And when you invest in people, you are storing up for yourself treasures in heaven. But oftentimes, don't we let our treasures on earth keep us from loving and serving people? Oh, I'm so sorry, I don't have time. I got to go make some more money. Sorry, I don't have time. That may compromise my security. I don't have time to do that because I need to focus on my own comfort and luxury. I'm so sorry, guys. And he says, instead of following God's command, they were condemning and murdering people. And what that means is that they were using their wealth to leverage the judicial system. See, these were people who were guilty, who went unpunished, and people who were innocent, who were sentenced to death. Don't envy wealth or wealthy people. So the question still remains, should Christians be rich? Should Christians be rich? And is it okay to be rich? Is it okay to be rich? Yes. You already are. But it's not okay to want to be rich. It's okay to have wealth. It's not okay to want to be wealth. So what should I want, Pastor Kelly? Well, let me tell you. Thanks for asking. So I appreciate it. You should want contentment. Determine what is enough. And I'll tell you the equation that the Bible outlines for enough is Jesus plus nothing equals everything. Jesus plus nothing equals everything. And when we complain about the things we don't have, it makes Jesus look bad. Because we're essentially saying Jesus is not enough. I also need my career. I need my children. I need my 2.5 children, in fact. I need to be married by the end of the year. I need the cancer to be gone. I need this sickness to be cured. I need my parents to come back. First Timothy 6 says, godliness with contentment is great gain. Contentment is pictured so beautifully by King David. I just kind of put this in as a last-minute verse that I think you should know. It's Psalm 131:2. He says it like this, but I have calmed and quieted myself. I am like a weaned child with its mother. Like a weaned child, I am content. Jesus compares what it's like to be in the kingdom. And unless you are like a child, you will have none of it. Like a child who's weaned from its mother is content. Why does King David, the giant slayer, compare himself to a child who's weaned from his mother's body? Because children who are not weaned only want their mother for milk. They only want their mother for sustenance. They don't love their mother for their presence yet, until they are weaned, until they want their mother for their mother. Sometimes we treat God like he is a cosmic food truck, where we want God for his gifts, not for God. And when we come to God like a weaned child, and we say, I want God for God, that's what it's like to be like a child. That is what contentment looks like. Jesus plus nothing equals everything when we go to God for God. First we looked at the warning, then we looked at the judgment, and now we looked at the witnesses. And now I'm going to conclude right now. And I just want to show you what wealth does to our hearts. It's a trap that allures us away from God. And it's much like a trap that you would find in the ancient world, that would allure monkeys to be captured by their captor. And what it would be, they would put like a banana or a piece of fruit inside a hollowed out, a coconut or something. And then what monkeys are, they're so dumb that they'll put their hand inside the coconut to grab the item, but they will not release the item, and they will be trapped. It's a monkey trap. They're too dumb to think that they're too dumb to think, oh, I should just open my hand so I can go away, right? Their intelligence is not there unless they're trained. Obviously, these are monkeys in the wild, and so the reality is that wealth can be that way to us. Riches and wealth can be so alluring that we think we can get all of what we get on earth. We can get this vision of success in our lives, and we hold on to it, but we think we can hold on to this and also live free in Christ. But that's not going to be the case. It's a trap. And if I had a gift of Akbar, I would show you it. But I do have a video. Go ahead and check out this video real quick. Hunting monkeys. There's no audio, so I can talk over it. All right, so this is the strategy of how to hunt monkeys with fruit into a calabasa. I don't know what that is, but it looks like a coconut. But it's not a coconut. It's a calabasa. So you see how the hunter is putting the thing in the thing, and they're telling us more things. Great. It's just a little tree. Oh, innocent. Oh, you can smell that? The monkeys can smell that. The monkeys smell something. Yes. Attracted by the bait, the monkey inserts its hand. Oh, this is me. Oh, I just want a new car. Oh, I just wanted a boyfriend or girlfriend. Oh, yeah, I just gonna try out this new dating app. Oh, okay, yeah, I just gonna wait a minute. I can't get it. I went on this date, and this date didn't go very good, and now I really miss Jesus, but I can't get back to Jesus. Right? There I am. I'm just hanging, and I realize I want a boyfriend, but I also want Jesus. But all the boys I keep dating, they keep wanting to do things, and I just can't figure out. I want this job, and it gives me a lot of money, but it makes me work on Sundays, so I can't go to life group. I don't know. I don't know if that resonates with anybody, but this is how the monkeys are trapped. All right, you get it. Go ahead and turn off the video. That monkey is trapped and is going to become monkey soup. All right. So you guys get it. That's what wealth is to our lives. Hold to wealth very lightly. Now, as the band comes up, I want you to see a picture of what the Christian life looks like through the eyes of certain people that Jesus actually commends. See, what I want you to know is that it's okay to be rich, but it's not okay to want to be rich. And life on earth is like a sinking ship. The more you have, the faster you drown. And we will ultimately be judged by how we spend our resources. You should take note of that. You will be judged on how you spend your resources. And they're not your resources, they're God's anyways. And what I want you to do is become content and generous. That's exactly the message of this moment, is being content and being generous to three groups of people, or in three different ways. Here's the first way. First, be generous to the poor. Care about them. Ask yourself, how much do I care about those who have less than me? Number two, forget about any legalistic percentages. All right, forget about it, right? To the rich young ruler, Jesus said, give everything you have to the poor. But to Nicodemus, he just said, give 50%. Or Zacchaeus, he just said, give 50%. So forget about percentages, okay? Let's just throw that out of the window, right? And then the third way that we give is that we look to the cross as our rubric on how we are generous. Sacrifice is the measurement of our generosity, because that was the measurement of how God was generous to us. Listen to this quote from Tim Keller. Jesus' power moves away from those who love power and money. And Jesus' power moves towards people who give power and money away. I suggest that tonight you move towards Jesus. Lastly, there's this woman. There's this woman that was somewhat repugnant to the rest of the world, but she loved Jesus with all she had. So what she ends up doing is breaking her alabaster jar. Just breaking it and pouring it all over Jesus. Here's what it says, Matthew 26:6. It says, while Jesus was in Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume, which she poured on his head as he was reclining at the table. Now, there are some contextual things that you won't understand, but the reality is every person had an alabaster jar, because that was their embalming. That was there for them when they died, so that they had something valuable to pour on them and to preserve their own bodies. but she was willing to give her only last inheritance, her only last, her retirement plan. That's pretty much her retirement. She took her retirement plan, and instead of opening the bottle and pouring it on Jesus like a normal person, right, she impulsively bashes it over Jesus' head and pours it on him because she was so grateful for the gift of God that was standing in front of her that she was willing to throw logic aside, bash open what was most valuable, and make sure that every single drop went to Jesus. That's what she did with her alabaster jar. That's what she did with her retirement. That's what she did with her wealth. And that's what she did with her life. And that is exactly what blessed us in this story, because Jesus said it this way. Truly I tell you, wherever the gospel is preached, wherever the gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will be told in memory of her. She is an example of a life that is poured out for Jesus, right? This woman is a picture of a gospel response. This woman is a picture of what it looks like to respond to the gospel with generosity. How about you? How about now? She didn't wait. She saw the moment. She cracked that sucker open. How about you? This could be your moment. I don't even know what God is calling you to do, but I bet you do. If there was one thing that you would do for God and you knew you couldn't fail, what would that one thing be? Whether it's to give up something or to get into something. If you were to do one thing for God and you knew that you could not fail, what would it be? Let's pray. Father, I give you everything. Father, forgive me from holding on to wealth instead of righteousness. Father, forgive me for holding on to comfort instead of Christ. Father, forgive me for failing to love my neighbor as myself. Father, forgive me for choosing wealth, riches, luxury, and comfort over your Son. Thank you that you've been so generous by giving your one and only Son, and it causes me to be generous. That when I look at the cross, I realize that sacrifice is the only thing that I can offer. And so I give you my life, I give you my all, I give you the riches, I give you my poverty, because I know that I'm a poor, impoverished child in your eyes. So no matter how much wealth this world says I have, I know that all I have is really you, because Jesus plus nothing equals everything. And so, Lord, quiet my soul like a weaned child, that I may want you for you. Father, I give you my life, give you my heart, give you my dreams, because you are the all and in all. I look to you for my greatest accomplishment. I look to you for my greatest success. I look to you for my all and everything. Father, take my life, make it be unto thee an offering. In Jesus' name, amen.